Hello everyone, this is Biff Whitfield from the Special Interest Group for Virtual Environments, which is part of ISTE. This is our last of our kind of SIGVE calendar year speaker series, and we thought we'd wind it down with a panel discussion from the people that attended ISTE's 2012 conference in San Diego, California, and also the people that were a part of our in-world Second Life presence that helped out to bring those presentations to Second Life for those who couldn't make it. So without further ado, I am going to maybe jump around the table here and let the panel introduce themselves. Hey, no clue, we just got started, so go ahead and have a seat. So maybe what I'll do is my first question, if you remember my little note card that I passed out to everybody, just open that up, was tell us about whether you are a presenter, participant, volunteer, SIG representative, virtual participant, machinima star, or all of the above, and if you presented or have a specific title, please tell us briefly the topic of your presentation. And if we start with me being the start point, maybe we'll go around counterclockwise and start with Rurik. So if you can answer that first question, just tell us your role, tell us if you presented or you just saw things, and tell us the topic of your presentation. Take it away, Rurik.
Hit buttons. Hey, I saw things, and apparently I can't hit the voice button when I mean to. I was not an official presenter for anything, although I did get roped into a couple things last minute for the mobile learning SIG. I just got in there as a member at large, and looks like I'm going to be running with a couple of things related to international mobile implementations. But in general, was there, enjoyed the playgrounds a lot. Spent a lot of time hanging out with people that I've been talking to online. I think I did more of that than actually attending presentations. I spent a ton of time running around trying to meet everybody that I promised myself last year I would meet and I missed out on, and so I added to that list and kept running around. And then it was definitely amazing. Had a chance to volunteer in a couple different aspects of the conference. I feel like I wish I could have split myself into 12 different people, because some people that I really enjoy hanging out with and talking to I barely saw at all. And then some people that I saw the entire time, I definitely didn't want to give up any of the time that I had with them, because there were so many great things going on, so many ideas that were being shared. It's kind of fun just to follow somebody around that you know in the virtual worlds and get their take and their human, real-life, immediate reactions to crazy things going on. So it was definitely an interesting time.
Thanks, Rurik. Yeah, I only got to see you really once, I think, Rurik. You were hobnobbing, I think, with Kathy Schrock at the time or something. But well, and we're going to move around the table here and head on over to Golden Gray Moon, or Gord Holden in real life. So, Gord, you want to answer that first question?
Yeah, hi, Spiff. I did hear Rurik just fine, by the way. I'm having trouble hearing you. You're just barely a whisper. But I know where we're at, so off I go. Well, my role, I was a presenter. I did a brief presentation at the SIGVE playground. It was entitled "To Follow," and the idea of that perhaps we can experience success by going where the people are going, and the message to many, of course, to follow the kids first of all. They're the ones we're working with. I was also a participant, going around listening to as many people speak as possible, and also meeting up with people that I highly respect in this field. The presentation, I think, I felt it went pretty positive. I guess probably I've told you as much as you're wanting to know right now, and we'll get into our reaction to the presentations made by some of the keynote speakers in a bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Gord. And we'll move on over down the table to Abacus. I believe you're up next there, sir.
Sure. Basically, I did a little bit of everything. Volunteered, co-presented, was at several different playgrounds, and I'll go ahead and paste them in the chat so that we prepared a little bit. So SIGVE, SIGVE GS, it was kind of fun. Worked a lot with running around with Peggy and the rest of the cognitive dissonance guildies that were there, and helping her out with her WoW on School presentations. And I'll talk a little bit about the co-presentations a little bit later.
All right, awesome, Abacus, thank you. And moving down the table, we get to our dear friend, Kayvon. We zip around the corner. Kayvon, welcome.
Well, I basically just attended sessions and didn't do much more than that. Okay, I presented and done stuff way too much.
Bull.
Okay, but the deal of it is, everything I was doing, I had co-presenters and I had people who are sitting around this table here who were working on the projects, and I just happened to be the one presenting here while I think that they were still doing the hard work in Second Life and the virtual worlds. Yeah. I did get to, and basically, I guess I would say, is I tried to meld some different things that I see happening. So I did presentations at SIG Mobile, at SIG VER SIG, and then at the Game SIG. And I guess I just tried to meld all the future trends and things like that together.
Okay. Thanks, Kay. I'm glad you gave us a little more detail because I knew you were holding out on us a little bit. As we move around the table, Scott, you want to tell us your doings? And by the way, Scott has, and maybe others have too, Scott's done some really awesome blog posts of really his whole experience at ISTE. And Scott always does a nice job of highlighting his explorations on his blog. So take it away, Scott.
Well, if anybody is telling you too much, it's probably me. And I made it sort of a goal to really do some reflections because I just wanted to. And so all that stuff is at my blog, which is at there in chat. I think it's like 8 posts. So yeah, I wrote a book, but I basically had a lot of fun, and I hung out with people I admire, and I got to go somewhere that was interesting, as we all will be able to do in San Antonio too next year. I think things are really proceeding at pace, and I've written it all, so there you go. So my answer to your question, Spiff, is yes.
All right, let's move on. No Clue. You've been kind of a part of SIGVE, a big part of SIGVE in a kind of virtual way, and this is your second year in a row that you've been able to do some things for us virtually. You want to tell us about that, my friend? Okay, we're just checking with No Clue, seeing if she is with. Let's go to Blue Barker. Blue Barker, can you tell us your experience this year in helping out SIGVE and our?
Sure, Spiff. I'm kind of the the newbie running in the technology education group, but I've been doing designing sims and stuff, and really taking that educational approach and trying to really focus on redefining how we do things visually in the virtual realm, because it's different from that 2D, 3D space, and then even from face to face and in cyberspace, if that's the case. But the big part of designing the SIGVE ISTE in-world, from the retro dino to the drive-in theater. We even had a sandbox area for people to try stuff out in, and it was really exciting to be a part of that and to really work on stuff. We also had a mini carnival going on too, but that was someone else, but he was also really good, and he was okay, and it was just exciting to really be there and help out, and crossing our fingers that the live stream was working.
Yeah, it's always a fun experience when you're working that. But great job on the diner. And for anyone here who hasn't seen the diner, it's just downstairs. It's on the property, and also the drive-in theater over there. Check that out too. That's really awesome. So thanks for being a part of that, Blue. Moving on to Grid Jumper. Grid Jumper, tell us your experience. Also one of our Second Life coordinators.
Okay. Well, I hung out in the diner with Blue and kind of panicked first thing in the morning when I got an email that said, we might not be able to broadcast. But that all went away, and it was just kind of cool to be in world watching real stuff going on. It kind of gave you a feeling that, we didn't see the screen real well or anything, but we heard voices, and it felt a little as though we were in San Diego, didn't it, Blue?
Well, I can tell you from the San Diego side of things, it's it's always, I think, it's exciting, but it's also very anxiety producing when you come to these big spaces, and you try and work out in your mind what things look like. And San Diego is such a sunny, just gorgeous place that finding a spot without sun is really hard, and they don't want you to find a place without sun, so it's not always good for displaying things. So, well, let's move on to question 2 for everybody. I'm going to put it in chat for folks. Okay, so the question is, and again we'll go around the room counterclockwise, is tell us about your experience overall. Was it positive? What were the big picture trends you walked away thinking about? I know I certainly walked away with some great stuff. So Rick, we'll start you off with that one.
One of the things that I really noticed and absolutely loved about this one was the student showcases. I vaguely remember them from last year, but this year it just seemed like there was such a strong inclusive element with student product and student activities, and that was really, really nice to see. At a lot of the conferences that I've gone to in the past, there hasn't been a very strong student platform or involvement, or I don't know how to say it, but it was definitely wild.
Any big trends that you thought of or saw, Rick?
I'm still in post-conference overwhelmed land, so yeah, there were some things, but I don't even know. I mean, yeah, I guess I'd agree with Grid Jumper that there was a lot of talk about flipped classrooms, but I'm kind of done hearing about flipped classrooms, because I think that that's what a lot of teachers do naturally when they're really trying to put together good mixed reality school together. So I don't know. I think the newest trend I think I saw was a willingness that I haven't seen before, a willingness amongst teachers that I talked to have their in-class activities recorded, and actually almost an eagerness to do that. A lot of the things that I've been seeing lately with that has been just real interest and excitement, especially going through the vendor halls and seeing some of the new technologies coming out. There was this great little camera that actually follows you around as you're standing there, and does a 360 view of your classroom, and it just was a different experience. It wasn't 2 years ago that I would have asked a teacher about getting themselves recorded, and they would have said, no, I do not want to be recorded. I don't want to have a video camera in my classroom. No. And it seems like some of that attitude has changed. And maybe that's just the pervasiveness of an always on camera sort of culture that we have now.
Great. I'm glad I pushed you a little further on that one. Let's head on over to Golden Gray Moon, and welcome, Bron. Thanks for coming. We'll have a seat. Gordon, what were your big picture trends?
Okay, well, I just going back to what Rurik was saying about being willing to videotape in the classroom. I mean, I think it's probably just a matter that its time has finally come. I think one of the things that kind of stood out for me that surprised me is that people were still talking about using Skype in the classroom, and it seemed to be a huge, brilliant idea to have kids from around the world communicating with each other through Skype. And that was rather disappointing to me, but I think I'm encouraged by what Rurik's saying, is that, it's just going to take time. And I attended different workshops from most of the people that were here, and I tend to be a really buoyant and I think positive person, but I had to say that I was really discouraged the first few days, especially when we were going to listen to talks that were being given by people who hadn't spent any time in a classroom and weren't really not only engaged with the educational community in research or anything like that, but had no real power to make any kind of decisions or change. It just seemed quite pointless to me, unfortunately, and that was sort of a rotten way to get started. I think probably the Prensky was maybe the bright light, someone who really seemed to know what he was talking about when it comes to education. The convention center was beautiful, and of course San Diego was beautiful. With all the room that was there after I was finished with the speakers, and frankly speaking, and again, this maybe sounds a bit pretentious, but I got way more listening to the speakers that were speaking from SIGVE. As I went down and I looked at all the presentations that were taking place and wondering what I was missing, I looked on that big board with a sea of workshops that was going on, and I really didn't see anything that I was missing by just being in that playground area. I then went into the area where there was all the products that were being vended, and I was hopeful that there would be a lot of real innovation coming from, Americans are especially well known for being innovative and bringing new things out. But I had to say, as I went through even the vendors area, I saw a lot of taking text and lessons and digitizing it and putting it into artificial intelligence. I saw a lot was just again about transferring text into another form. I think probably the digital printing was probably exciting for me to see the prices coming down, and probably one of the best things that I saw, and some of you are going to smile when I say this, because I think we really need to be beyond this, is with some of the kids in the earlier grades. They were there was a number of different programs that were being developed. They weren't quite video games. They're more like arcade games. They're not the kind of games that we would see as as really value added. But you had to fly over the mountain. You had to add 2 sums, or else you didn't make it over the mountain, kind of thing. And again, it's this skill and drill kind of thing, just done in a new format. So I was pretty depressed, I think, heading into the end of it. The highlight for me was meeting the folks from SIGVE, and also I think the Kim who spoke at the very last. He was quite a brilliant speaker, and I think he had a lot to offer people, administrators, to think about. And I hope that I hoped that administrators that were there got the message that they need to be courageous, and certainly teachers too, and maybe there needs to be, we talked about a revolution, but a revolution doesn't happen with a little bit of bloodletting, and I think that's what that's what it's always taken for there to be any kind of radical change. So that was it for me.
Great, thanks. Ready to go? Tell us about your experience, and maybe tell us about your title and presentation since you just got here. Welcome, Ron.
Yeah, sure. I got to the conference for EduBlogger, which is now Social Ed Con, and I think as a habit, that's a really great way to ease into ISTE, and I really always get value out of that. Great networking, see people I follow on Twitter and Facebook and other, Clout and Scoop It and whatever else. So I find that's a really good, loosely framed day that has a lot of value. I got a lot out of the playground, like Gord. I think it was very useful. And even though some of the presentations I knew quite well, it was good to hear the build on what I know about each of those people. And I suppose I spend a lot of time, I almost wish our playground was a persistent space, because the Bloggers Cafe is a really great, like if you don't know what to do or where to go or where to be, just hanging in the Bloggers Cafe always returns some value in terms of a conversation you'll have with someone or something that'll be happening there. So I think, those kind of persistent hangout spots are really valuable. I went to a couple of sessions on people who are doing gamification of communities of practice, and that's something that is my particular interest at the moment and something I'm working in. And I got immense value out of those, and I've since contacted each of those people that I met, and I'm, organising to have conversations with them one-to-one. So for me, even though I went to a small number of sessions, they were very targeted, and I think in past years I've tried to go to too much, and in this case I just was really targeted about what I wanted to do and who I wanted to follow up with, and I got immense value out of that. So I think, I'm not sure I'll go next year to ISTE, only because of the time of year, and people have been saying to me, well, if you come in March, because I'm coming from Australia, there's the digital media conference in March, and there's a mobile learning conference, I think it's in April, and there's a few others around that period of time, so I might be changing the time that I come to the States. So I think generally for me, ISTE is great value, but I have starting to fall into a policy a friend of mine has, where you go to a conference for a couple of years and then you switch to a new venue for a couple of years. So I don't know that I'll attend ISTE next year. Not that I didn't get value out of it, I'm just trying to max out the value I get out of my time in America. So my take on it is a little unique, because it's not just a matter of crossing the country or travelling a few states to get there. So that's my take on the conference.
Thanks, Bron. And I think Bron makes a really good point. For anyone who's going to go to a conference of especially ISTE's size, you can get really overwhelmed. And I think maybe Gord was coming to that point, and I got overwhelmed my first conference, but as you go, you kind of find out if you really focus on those sessions that you really enjoy, I think you get definitely a lot more out of it. So I agree, Ron, and that's I think a good overall strategy. Abacus, we'll move on to you. So tell us about your experience overall. Was it positive? What were the big picture trends you walked away with thinking about?
Sure, I think it was a very good conference. What I noticed, partially because I spent a lot of time in the games and SIGVE and SIGGS, as well as some of the other places I was at, is sorry about that. Might cut out on me. The big thing I saw was that it just seemed to be that this is the year of the games. We really saw a lot of games and simulations, a lot of different areas, and some of you are responding to my chat already. Yeah, I actually searched the program, and there were 44 entries that had the word games in the title of their presentation. So I think that's huge for ISTE. That hasn't happened before, so I really think that was definitely one of the things that I definitely saw a lot more of, were discussions of games. A lot of people were more open to games as a valid educational tool. I think the other thing that was out there that I saw a lot and heard a lot about is assessment. A lot of discussion on assessment and seeing especially how can we take these new tools and what exactly can we assess in a virtual environment or in a games, in the different games that are out there. And obviously the assessment's not going to be your traditional assessment, it's going to be more. So we had a lot of fun with that. And so I think that's really sort of was a big picture for me, was that we're definitely not alone in our use of simulations and games. We're starting to see more acceptance, and I think it's going to hit the commercial off-the-shelf games first. And using that, I think eventually what's going to happen is once the mainstream gets used to using games, they're going to be like, well, I want something a little bit more. And I think that's going to start having them overflow a little bit more into the sandbox genres like Minecraft, like Second Life, and where they actually start having educators build the simulations and build the teaching environment. So I think that'll be interesting. And then of course assessment will always be in there.
Thanks, Abacus. We'll move on over to Kay. Gabon.
I guess for me, I will tell you, I'm involved in other conferences in real life, so for me, the normal sessions aren't the most interesting things. The most interesting things at ISTE are the extras, like the social media con and the playgrounds and everything else that's taking place that does not look like a normal conference. Those are the interesting things to me. When it comes to the big picture trends, this is kind of what we saw. And I guess I would say I saw more than anything else was curiosity and a willingness to listen and to ask questions. Maybe they won't adopt what we're doing, but they're curious and they want information, and they'll steal everything. and here's what, and they'll look at everything. We had these QR codes that we gave out on business cards, these beautiful QR codes that Izzy Lander designed for our alternate reality game. Every single one of them went. When I came back, I saw I had one left, and that was because I stuck it in a pocket that I didn't know where it was. So everybody was grabbing those. I also saw during the presentations we were giving, a lot of people pulling up their iPads and taking pictures of the screen that we were using to present. We had lots of people asking questions afterwards. And the other thing about it is just a curiosity. And when I was teasing Blue about being the belle of the call, over at the games, SIG, what we did was, after a while, there was a couple of us, me and Abacus and Willow Shenlin and Peggy Sheehy, who were staffing the World of Warcraft table. And after a while, what we decided to do was bring up a Google Hangout call. And guess what? We we pulled up Grid, who was broadcasting the SIGVE. We pulled up Grid. I pulled up Blue, who decided to put his webcam on, and we pulled up a couple of the other people who have been designing the MOOCs and the ARGs and the online courses. And so we had them all across, as well as a picture of World of Warcraft, and we kept going back and forth. And people were just coming over just to see that. They really liked the idea of mixed reality, and they were so they were astounded that we were able to say, oh yeah, just down on the other side of the room, yeah, that's at the conference hall. That's where you're going to be seeing. That's where you'll see SIGVE, and SIGVE, yeah, they're presenting in World also. So we were able to show them that. So I really saw this curiosity and openness and willing to really take a peek at a lot of things. And I saw that with mobile and augmented reality and mixed realities. So that's really what I saw.
Okay, that's a good point, and I think Scott will agree with this. When we did the SIG Virtual Environments poster session, we had a lot of people come to our booth, and I think they were genuinely interested. I think there were some times where we really got bogged down talking to just one or two people when a lot of people were coming up to our booth. So I do think there was a lot of renewed curiosity. So good point. Scott?
Well, kind of quickly, what Kay had to say was really interesting to me, because at one point we had a fellow who's doing a Mobile Learning Asia conference in October come up, and was so fascinated by this kind of Hall of Mirrors thing that we'd set up with, Ustreaming into Second Life, and I think he came up actually during the last presentation, which was a Skype presentation, right, from North Carolina, into our place in San Diego, and then we were piping that back into Second Life, and he was like, what's going on here? And so invited us to do a presentation at his conference in October remotely. Apparently he's not going to fly me to Singapore, but very, very, very interesting stuff going on there. And then something that many people here, I don't think anybody here, but I went to, which was the Online Learning Institute on Wednesday, and I almost didn't go, but I was so pleased that I did, because well, first of all, I had to host a roundtable on K-12 online learning, but the coolest thing was Chris Dede's presentation about how he has created this virtual worlds assessment for environmental learning in a watershed, and then was compelled to add an augmented reality piece to it, where kids actually went out to the actual pond that he created his virtual world from, and he laced it with augmented reality pieces that the kids can point their mobile devices at and get information, and then take real-time scientific data at the pond. So it's, talk about a hall of mirrors. It's amazing. And he said virtual worlds in his presentation to these thought leaders on online learning times. And I just kept saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And he's going to present to us here in October. September, I'm sorry, he'll kick off the speaker sessions. And I'm going to pop in a URL to chat here, so you can go and listen to him, and it will be affirming to you if you do that. It was amazing. And so I'll pass on that. I also, well, actually I won't pass. I will say that I was so pleased with everything that went on at the SIGVE playground. And Bernadette Peters Bernadette came up to me after at the SIG leadership sort of reception that was held, and said, you know, I saw what was going on there, and that's how we want to treat our people. And it was very, very, very affirming. The way that we treat one another is a model for the way communities should work. And there you go. I'm gone.
Nice. Thanks, Scott. No Clue. Welcome, and chat it up for us. You do.
It's so nice to see everybody here today. And we've got people here that are around the table that must have been at least attending some of the events virtually. That's funny to say virtually because I actually felt I was there thanks to the work that Blue and Grid did and you guys to get us all connected. And I have to say, I kind of find that a little ironic and fascinating that some of the best stuff that goes on at ISTE is absolutely free and connected. And I think, you know, I was following the tweets of the keynote and all the backlash because it was so commercial. And, you know, I know that that's a big piece of the funding that ISTE gets. But here, I just feel like we're the little engine that could in the background, you know, doing and showing what it could really look like. And so I was actually attending another conference. It was a master class the same time ISTE was running. And I am going to actually just put in the chat. I did some recording there at the conference and threw up the YouTube videos. I don't know if you are familiar with John Hunter. He had I think one of the most highly respected, most inspirational TED Talks last year or the year before. And he does this game, but it's totally analog. He's been doing it for 34 years with the kids. It's called the World Peace Game. So I got to go and watch him play that for an entire week with the kids and then have some time with teachers. And it was fascinating for me because great teachers, but totally not the technology scene. And so it was a very intense and wonderful learning experience for me there. And then I would come back to the hotel at night and plug in and attend ISTE all night. And so I felt like I was really getting fed twice. And even though I couldn't attend, it was so wonderful. I don't feel like I missed it completely because I still felt so connected to all of you, and whether it was listening or participating through tweets or actually you guys Skyped me in a couple of times. I just want to say one thing about the master class that I watched, because it was such an affirmation of what we do is really not about the technology. It's about the quality of creating learning spaces for kids. And John Hunter talks about creating empty spaces. And I thought that was so important because I've been trying to find this language for a long time. As many of you know, since I've been into virtual worlds, been talking about letting the kids create it. But he was so articulate about saying that when we fill up the space with all the things we want the kids to learn, there's really no room for the learning. When you create empty spaces, that is when the kids can come in and discover. And I just, really have been reflecting on all of the different ways that we've been using virtual worlds in my school. And so as these, trends come and go, it's exciting to see all the new technology. But it was really nice to be grounded in really sound pedagogy. And I think the reason that I'm so drawn to virtual worlds and sandbox games is because it gives us a virtual way to give kids those spaces that they're starved for in school. So that's my takeaway from ISTE in a very oblique, sideways fashion.
Thanks. The SIGVE Machinima sessions, as always, you carried on fantastically from your hotel room.
Can I say say I just showed up. I really, all that thanks goes to Blue and Grid and Kay and Chris and Rourke, because they're the ones who pulled that all together. I just got to show up this year. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, they did. They did a great. All right. We are over to Blue Barker and Grid Jumper. So tell us maybe your perception of the presentations and trends you saw from the presentations.
I was kind of waiting for you to start because I already gave you my impression. Um, it was limited because, like for me, the only thing that was at ISTE was SIGVE because that's all I saw. So stuff that we've been working on, and if there was anything else when I'm a little bit on Twitter, with the keynote and that kind of thing, but it was basically virtual worlds and games, because that's all that I saw. That was my takeaway.
Blue Barker, how about you? Was there anything?
Like, I mean, it was semi-limited because, it was just SIGVE, but I mean, it was kind of more than that, for me at least, because even though we had that presentation on Massively Minecraft, I mean, that it was almost like a repeat from VWBPE, but I mean, that side discussion when everyone was talking held around the laptop, that was kind of cool, but I mean, I didn't really, understand what it took, what actual passion the kids had to have and what their exact responsibilities were, because I mean, when you're doing a presentation, you have to be really clear, concise, and quick to the punch. And then when you have that one-on-one, it felt like I really understood what was expected of the kids, and I really didn't understand that. And I was really impressed with how much they actually did and how important Massively Minecraft had become in these kids' lives. And it was very, very touching. And I also, including with the Machina Fest, I just want to say that Vector and Spectral blew my mind entirely. It was fantastic. Pookie was. I mean, even though it wasn't me about winning. It was just even being on the list because I was so late with my entry. But Pookie was. She's always got that eye for everything, and she's really the master designer, not me. And just seeing that Machina is able to teach, and that we're putting the filmmakers' hands into teachers and educators, so it's possible for them to do things and not just, well, let's watch The Perfect Storm because we're talking about meteorology. No, it's really coming down to what it is that we're teaching the students and really filtering it in through the best way possible. And you know what, reading books, it's just not enough anymore. And I think being able to put that stuff on the screen for people to see, make it an interactive or as funny or comical, but still learning at the same time, is really going to get the messages across. So I really, it's SIGVE really did more than I thought it was going to do.
Great. Thanks a lot. Some good answers. And we're getting a lot of good stuff, and I hate to, pause some of the great conversations. But let's see if we can kind of maybe do a few speed answers through our next few questions that I had prepared. So maybe if we could just make a sentence or two and then move on. The next one was about the keynotes. I know some of you have already talked a little bit about the keynotes, but maybe if you could shout out a name of a keynote that you remember, whether it's Sir Ken Robinson, Mark Prensky, Yang Zhao, and maybe just give a quick little snippet of whether you thought it was inspiring, good, you'd see it again, that sort of thing. So just quickly around the table. So we'll start with Rourke. Go for it.
I'm just going to do all three really quickly because what I felt like was Young Zhao, awesome, you got it. And then the first keynote Sunday night totally disappointed me. And then I didn't make it the last keynote, but mostly because I thought that they were kind of missing the whole point of the conference. We came there for something and they fed us, we came for a vegetarian course and they fed us a full meat course, and I just wasn't interested.
All right. I'll have to maybe come back and expand on that one. Golden. Gray Moon, what'd you think, Gordon?
Yeah, I guess as a number have already said, I think that Kim Zhao, yeah, I really did enjoy him. I didn't really think, I didn't really feel that the rest were speaking to me. I'm already converted. That's why I was there. Um, and I don't know, I can't speak for others that were in the audience. I almost hope that that would be the case. That would probably be a good thing. Um, Again, I just think that what the people around the table had to offer was probably more critical because it's I think it's a little bit more leading edge, and important. If there was something that I think I came away with some conviction about is the fact that it concerns me that we speak. Um, we all have something really important to say, I think, but we speak with many different voices, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I think that we need to really focus on how we present that so that when people are coming to hear about virtual environments, that they're able to hear it in ways that are organized so that they can get right to the meat of the matter for them. So if they're a grade 2 classroom, for instance, they know who they need to go to speak to, or how the workshop that they need to listen to. I think, for instance, I went to Peggy's workshop on World of Warcraft, and it was wonderful. I just was in the last little bit of it, and it was packed. And as I think others were saying, there's a tremendous amount of interest. But I also know that as people were walking out there just saying, that this wasn't going to fly for their grade 3 or 4 class, and so it might have been really interesting if we were able to coordinate that so that maybe it was Peggy and No Clue talking at the same time so that everybody who was in the room was able to take something away that would work for them. I'm not sure if I'm really saying this very clearly, but um, I just think it's kind of like people coming to a table and looking through a whole bunch of different lenses, and because of all those different lenses, the message gets obscured. And those lenses, if they were combined, would be a really powerful tool for taking a really close look at the areas that people need to take a look at. I hope that made some sort of sense. I think that's all I've got to say.
It did, and I think you were hitting some pretty good notes with Bron next to you. Bron, you put some good stuff into chat here. You want to maybe just summarize some of those points for us?
Yeah, sure. I think I agree with everyone. Young Zhao was brilliant. We were expecting big things from the panel with Sir Ken Robinson, and Prensky, like him or not, had a right to be sitting on that panel. But the two female speakers were advertising a product. The one woman from Qualcomm and the TV star. Now, it really annoyed me that we had a woman on the panel because she had a doctorate in neuroscience. But she wasn't on the panel for that. She was on the panel because she's a TV show star out of a popular TV show, and I think that kind of was a little offensive because she wasn't role model for a girl in science because she's turned her back on science to go down the road of being a TV star. So it was very annoying to see. And every time the one from Qualcomm was asked a question, she wasn't an educator. She didn't have an education background, but she was speaking to, I don't know how many thousands of teachers in that room, and really was contributing nothing. And, so the two women, I think, were very disappointing because there was an opportunity for some whip-smart role models of women in technology, and we had two very lackluster speakers, one of whom didn't turn up to the question time afterwards. And what they had to say was really a Texas Instruments, and people tweeted, this keynote brought to you by Texas Instruments, People were incensed. The back channel was angry, and angry is the right word to use. But the question time afterwards was much better, and Sir Ken Robinson actually injected a lot more commentary himself. Prensky made some other, added some more comments, and I think it really, was less diluted. But as a keynote, it was appalling. I'm sorry, I have no other words to describe it.
I think a lot of people are obviously agreeing, and you can see that keynote. Did anyone put that in back channel chat? That's how I saw it. I didn't get to see it live, but after that. Let's keep going. Abacus, some quick thoughts about keynotes?
I kind of agree with everybody here. For me, I found a lot of the sessions better than the keynotes. So a lot of hits and misses with some of the keynotes. I did like the opening ceremonies with Marat, with Peggy Sheehy running around and doing like 10 or 12 costume changes. That was kind of fun and really sort of got everyone ready to go and got everyone entertained. And I think that was a really good way to kick off the ISTE. They did a really good job of building up the energy and delivering on that. And they also ended a little bit early too, which is always welcome when you've been sitting for a while. So, but yeah, no, their opening ceremonies was really good. Really set the tone, I thought, for the conference.
Yeah, that's Peggy Sheehy and Mario. What's Mario's last name? Mario. Help me out here, folks. Well, we'll move on. Okay. Thoughts about keynotes?
I quite honestly, I don't bother going to keynotes, and and really, here's the reason why. Keynotes usually are they're going for they're going for the middle. They're not going. They're usually not going to push us. Sometimes they get ones that are very good and say what we like to hear, but it's very hard to get a keynote that's going to appeal to 13,000 people. That's going to appeal to a crowd like us. I guess what I would like to say is what I found very, very intriguing were the people who had obvious products, who weren't necessarily trying to sell their products, but were rather having the small conversations over breakfast and at the side and stuff like that. That's who I ended up being really intrigued with. The people who absolutely knew there was no way I was going to buy their product because I do not have that kind of purchasing, yet who were willing to talk. And some of those people really were the assessment people. I met some people from Leverage. They are the people who do the assessment for Army of One, which is a simulation for the U.S. Army that has people playing the game to see if they should go into the Army. And all that kind of assessment, while Chris Dede is talking about some of this stuff, this stuff's already in place. And they had an analytics person there from that company that's doing that I was really able to talk to and find out the things that we really want done are really being done. Also, Lisa Dolly. I was able to get some great conversations with her about NOAA and badging, and I got to talk to a lot of people about the MacArthur Foundation and what they do there, and also about where they're looking forward. So for me, it wasn't about the keynotes. It was really about the very quiet people who weren't presenting in the front, who are talking on the side. And the other thing, someone who showed up is the person who came up with the virtual game, the virtual world Yville, who was there. And he wasn't presenting, but he showed up in a lot of these quiet conversations. And I guess I kind of like that, yes, much, much better than the keynotes. And I guess I don't schedule to see keynotes.
Fair enough. Thanks, Kay. Scott.
Yeah, so I put a little object off to the side there, which is the answer to Yang Zhao's question, why is America still here? And I have to say that his keynote had me in tears of laughter at least once, maybe more. Andy was sitting next to me, so he can attest to that. Um, yeah, it's all about innovation, and I mean, his whole talk was about how uh, China wants to be the U.S. and the U.S. wants to be China, and it's just all like cattywampus. So yes, there is, and I put that into chat recently. If you'll scroll back up, Claudia, um, really worth watching. The whole thing about standardized testing and educating creativity out of kids. He said it all. He said what we wanted Ken Robinson to say, and I have to say that I skipped on that keynote, that opening keynote, and everything I've heard indicates that it was the right thing to do. And Gord, I didn't go to the final keynote, but I will go back and watch it now that you've said that it was good. So there you go. That's about all I have to say about keynotes.
Yeah, I think we've got a majority opinion. I think that Young Zhao was definitely the tops of that category. All right, let's do maybe, I know we're going over time here, but let's do just some speed chatting. So let me ask the next question just about San Diego. Rather than talk, let's just kind of throw chats in the chat box of what your impressions of San Diego were. Just if you want to use adjectives, just throw some adjectives down about San Diego and what you thought about the city in general.
That's hilarious. I'm going to read Rurik's. It was Portland, indoor temps, but with sun for the recording. Cool.
All right, so keep chatting those in there. That was a good way to go through that question. Without missing a beat. But let's maybe wrap it up on one question from my note. What one thing will you take away from ISTE 2012? Is there something you're going to do this year in your district or teaching that you're going to walk away with trying this year? Let's give that a try. So just rattle off one thing, and we'll start with Rurik.
Can you come back to me?
Absolutely. Let's move on to Gord.
Okay, well, I guess I just have to try and repeat, that what I came away with is that, as far as for SIGVE goes, I would just really love to see as a goal for this year to have a really cogent approach that can really address the questions that individual teachers are looking for. So they're not trying to find it from any one of us, but they're getting it from all of us. And, and I think, our combined, we have this opportunity through even sessions like this to really share knowledge in ways that other groups don't use. And, I just would really like to see that happen. I know that there's a workshop coming up on a resource that is actually a very poor resource, but it's something that that people don't know about because they haven't really looked at it yet, and others have looked at it. And just through sharing, I think that we would be able to cut away a lot of the dross and really make sure that people aren't getting into these kind of nightmare situations where they invest a great deal of time in a virtual learning environment and then find it hasn't worked for them, because those kinds of stories get around a lot faster than the ones that do work, unfortunately. And it's an excuse that we don't want to give people. But that would be, what I came away from the conference with, is just a real desire to participate in that in some way, and provide a platform at something like ISTE that is in the future that's going to be a lot more united rather than disjointed. I hope that makes sense.
It does, thanks. Ron, what'd you come away with you're going to take back with you?
Here's a funny thing. ISTE kind of connected me back into Second Life, which I haven't had a lot of reason to be in for a bit of a while. And I think I'm missing things. I realized how much I've missed it. And I think I'm going to make more effort to be part of things that are happening in Second Life again, because, it really struck home with me that I've missed the people and the place and the professional learning I was doing there. So the real world made me realize how much I miss my virtual.
Well put. Abacus.
Yes, for me, it really came from the co-presentation I did with Kayvon and Dr. Gibson and some others on performance assessment and talking about what's there. We actually had Kayvon talking to them about, what really is needed by teachers in the field currently. And so she brought up a wonderful video from one of No Clue's former students, Crumple. And so she brought up Crumple's pet skunk, Machinima, and we were talking a little bit about how do we look at core standards and different things like that. And and it was funny because Key started showing it, and like everyone's looking at it, like you could just see this quizzical look on their face, and they loved it. I mean, he was definitely the belle of that presentation. And like afterwards, Kay goes, "This is called machinima." And like there's about 50 people in the room, and like three-quarters of them all of a sudden mouthed machinima, and they all pulled out their papers, they all pulled out their iPads, they all started typing it in and how to actually spell machinima, and it was really cool. So it was just awesome. And so for me, there's a lot of people out there who are open to new ideas. They're tired of the old ways of assessment. They're tired of teaching to standardized fill in the blank type of or multiple guess tests. And so a lot of them, especially whenever whenever I talked about and brought it back and talked about, how many of you saw assessment? How many of you saw evidence of mastery of core competencies in this machinima from Crumple? And when we told him how old Crumple was when he wrote it, and whenever he did it, and he was only 8 years old, and like they were just floored. They were just floored that a student that young could produce such a wonderful instructional piece that could easily be looked at and could be shared. And that's the wonderful thing about machinima, is that's how you share the experience of these virtual environments, is you show them what's going on there and say, this is what's going on, everybody can watch it.
Thanks, Abacus. Moving along. Okay.
I'm not sure how to top that. Okay, you don't have that kind of story. Okay, yeah, Machinima keeps the experience fresh. Okay, the big thing that I saw is, here's the big difference that I saw. People are getting games, and they can't tell the difference between a virtual world and a game. I'm sorry, they can't. And you can totally slip them in. And you can totally say sandbox genre. And I just saw more curiosity there, and not a lot of explaining that had to be done like previous years at other conferences. So for me, I'm seeing movement forward, and I'm gonna keep pushing that movement.
Thanks, Kay. Scott.
I guess I'm really not talking to you, Andy, but it's about the community, stupid. It so is. Um, and what I'm hearing around the table is what I perceived this year there's like a new level of interest and new level of acceptance, and it's like a childlike inquisitiveness that's kind of overtaken the broader community outside ours, that seems to, I mean, people came to, we had standing room only in many of our playground presentations, and they were curious and they were open and curious. So that's what I got from it. That's what we can do during the course of the year. I mean, the MOOC is awesome. I'm done.
All right, thanks, Scott. And I think that summarized things where we are right now. I think there is some curiosity in the things we do. I think that's really, I think where we can kind of end it, and I hope no one minds.
Wait, can I add one thing?
Oh, yes, go for it.
Because I did have a takeaway from ISTE, and I did 3 other conferences back to back, so I guess that's 4. But the one thing, and I just saw so many great things and some things that were frustrating, is really our and I guess this is an old call, but I'm feeling it. I'm really feeling it for myself, is the need to document what we're doing, because as we're moving forward, we're seeing a lot of crap that is coming to the surface very quickly, and it's that brand new shiny packaging of the same old crap. And we know that there's a lot of other stuff that is really fabulous that is going on, and a lot of it is stuff that's going on in our classrooms, or and just the need to tell those stories. And I feel stronger than ever that is imperative, to show really that it's not about it's not about the technology, it's about the quality of changing the way we do things, which we are. So just had to say that out loud. Thanks.
Thank you, No Clue. Thanks for jumping in before I went to commercial. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to, I think, wrap it up here. We did go a little bit longer. I'm going to stop the taping here, but please, I don't want the conversation to stop. Certainly we can keep on rolling, and again, I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank everyone for their perspectives. I think ISTE was a really kind of eye-opener. We've got some definite challenges, and thanks to No Clue and really Bron for putting those out there. We definitely we've got some work to do, but I think we've also got some great energy. So with that, I'm going to turn off the tape, but please feel free to stick around and chat, and thanks, everybody. Have a great night.